Hi, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Cabinet Con, which is our very first investigation from Small Town Justice. I'm your host, Kyle O'Donnell. Today is Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. Our next episode will be released on Tuesday, April 19th. 2022. Okay, so to skip the disclaimer, the quiz, the shoutouts, and all that other fun stuff, skip forward to about 7 minutes and 5 seconds. One quick but very important announcement that I'll add here before I get into this week's episode is that when this original episode was in pre-release, right, like when we were doing our test audience releases, the other person of interest in the story, Michael McKay, who had formerly had a warrant issued for his arrest at that time. At this point in our official launch, he's not only been picked up for that warrant, he's been taken into custody, booked, charged, and he was almost immediately released on a secured $5,000 bond. But at the time of recording this episode for this 2022 official launch, it has been confirmed that he's been arrested again on related charges. Now, this is extremely important for Robert Stoll's case because they are speculated to have been in cahoots in what looks like a fraud ring operating throughout the Florida Panhandle. That is still alleged at this point. And as we will hear in the next few episodes, many of the victims, the attorneys, the investigators, both the private and the public servants, and even Robert Stoll's wife, it appears as though Stoll may have been groomed for the role of felony fraudster. And yes, you did hear that correctly. I did speak with Robert Stoll's wife. She actually reached out to me. She reveals quite a lot about the lead up to his conviction, and I'm also currently speaking to Robert Stoll's inmate coordinator about getting approval to speak with him in prison. More updates on all of this later. If you're a member of the Legally Insane fan club, you probably already know all of this because that means you have access to the live streams that the crew and I get together and do. We don't just talk about the case itself and reveal a lot about what's going on behind the scenes. We actually call the alleged perpetrators live on the stream. And believe me when I say these are crazy conversations. Just this past week, I called Michael McKay on the live stream, and that conversation went a little something like this.
So you're calling from block numbers. You won't tell me who you are. You won't give me a return phone call number to call you back. And you're asking a lot of weird questions. You're playing a game. So can you just shoot straight with me and quit fucking playing around and tell me what you need, why you need it, and how you need it? Because I don't have time to bluff and play games, and neither do you. You called my cell phone number, no caller ID, 3 times in a row, attempting to get me to answer the phone, while I'm sitting with my family, attempting to get them handled with something I need to handle. So you explain to me why you blow my phone up 3 times in a row, refuse to leave a message. Explain that to me, and then explain to me why you're asking all these weird questions. You're fishing.
Yeah, he got pretty heated there a few times, but I don't want to reveal too much about what we went into there. If you want to hear the entire thing, just head over to legallyinsanefilms.com, join the fan club at the Investigator level, and we'll see you on the next live stream. The wonderful ladies that you'll hear from today have some particularly useful advice for not only identifying and avoiding scams that may also have infiltrated your corner of the country. They also have some amazing resources for keeping abreast of the latest cons to be circulating around the country. And as we all know, cons frequently take place online, so even if you're in a small town corner of, say, upstate New York, or if you find yourself in a little borough of, I don't know, whereversville in the Pacific Northwest, obviously you're going to still be affected by this. This also includes how you can be proactive at bringing these criminals to justice. That's right, they will equip you with the knowledge of how to become a crime fighter yourself and even see these particular criminals behind bars. By voluntarily continuing to consume this and all other media released by Legally Insane Films LLC, you are agreeing to the terms and conditions outlined at legallyinsanefilms.com/privacy. Last week's quiz winner was James from Southern California. James is actually an old friend of mine, and due to the fewer numbers of correct quiz responses, and I'm also assuming that we also got fewer responses anyway due to the Thanksgiving holiday, I went ahead and gave 2 prizes away. One went with a gal who wishes to remain anonymous, and the other to James. Now, one might think that this could potentially lean into favoritism, since James is an old friend of mine from my time living in Southeast Asia. But when I offered him free access to our latest documentary, he actually refused. He went on and bought himself his own copy and thanked me for creating the show. So thank you for your support, James, and I hope you enjoy our humble film that uncovers a nuclear-level civil rights violation in a tiny town and so inspired the very show that you're listening to right now. For this week's quiz, you'll have to listen in as Lisa and Tammy detail their work in getting the Stoll case moving. Here are the questions. A. What does Tammy call the con artists that seek out victims made vulnerable by Florida's destructive seasonal storms? Question B. How many chances does the Better Business Bureau give the business and the consumer to work out their issues before giving them a rating on their website? Sub-question for this one, why do they do that? Question C. Tammy and Lisa outline a ton of great tips for protecting yourself from scams. What is one of those tips? As always, send your answers to thejusticepod@gmail.com and follow me on Twitter @Kyle O'Donnell or @justice_pod for these questions. My tweets are protected there for obvious reasons, so your request to follow will have to be approved, but I'll post those there just in case you didn't get time to digest them just now. Last week's vote, as well as a few comments that I received via email, indicated that you guys wanted to hear from the Better Business Bureau, which is who I'll be talking to today. But you also indicated that Micah's final interview was important to you as well. So to keep things moving and to cover as much ground as possible, next week, for all my fan club members, I'll not only release the regular podcast that you guys voted for, and that one is with Renee, who rented a storefront to a business associate involved in this alleged fraud business with the star of our show, Robert Stoll. I'll also go ahead and release that segment of Micah's interview. That one will be released as a bonus. My gift to you in thanks for your fan club support. I'll announce this week's vote at the end of the conversation with the ladies at the Better Business Bureau, so stay tuned for that. And now, on to the show.
Thank you for calling your Better Business Bureau. How may I help you?
Hi, I was hoping to reach Tammy.
One moment, please.
Thank you.
This is Tammy and Lisa.
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
I am well. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Good. Are you guys in two separate locations, or are you guys in the same room?
No, we're in the same room.
Okay. All right. So we don't have to worry about delays and changeovers from technology to one person to the other. Well, that's always good.
It's the phone. The old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Thankfully, that actually still works in podcast world.
Yes. And so. She doesn't know this, but he texted me like 3 times. Okay, I'm calling in 5. Okay, I'm almost calling. Okay, it works.
Normally, that's how I do things, but I drop the ball every once in a while and don't hit you up at all like I did yesterday. So.
Do you hear that background noise?
I don't. No, you guys are
okay. Good.
Pretty clear.
Because it's bothering me.
What are we talking about? You got a fridge going or an AC or something?
No, we have our cleaning people here.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys are coming in okay. If I take a pause for a second and maybe if they do come into the room, start vacuuming, just kind of like shush them away.
They're not coming in.
Okay.
No, we closed the door. They're not coming in. It's I actually have my own office, so we just kept the door closed.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for keeping your ear out for that. Not a lot of people do, and thanks for thinking ahead to that. And speaking of that, everybody's phones notifications on mute and silent and all that other stuff, so we won't get a couple of bings.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have I got you for? I don't want to keep you guys too long. I think about a dozen questions.
Lisa wants to leave by 2.
All right.
Our time, not yours.
All right. Well, talk fast, Lisa.
No problem. 12 questions, I got it.
All right, cool. All right. Well, if you guys are ready, we'll go ahead and jump right in.
Okay.
All right, cool. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Small Town Justice. I'm your host, Kyle O'Donnell. Today, I'm joined with Lisa and Tammy, whose last names I'll let them say if they're comfortable with doing that on the show. But their work for the Better Business Bureau is huge. And they are largely to blame for the tremendous victory in thwarting a serial con artist operating throughout the panhandle of Florida. So first of all, thanks so much for joining me, ladies. Tammy, first off, let's start with you. Why don't we get you to introduce yourself, because you've been my contact through scheduling all this stuff. And I have to say, you're just terrible at scheduling and keeping appointments, because you just keep dropping the ball on me, right?
Okay, good thing this isn't a video.
I'm kidding, of course. I am the one who actually dropped the ball yesterday. We were supposed to meet and talk, and I am actually still picking up the pieces of what was supposed to be a really nice, really short, early morning shoot that was just doomed before it even began. So I, first of all, apologize for that about that, ladies, and thanks so much for your patience and getting with me. Tammy, tell us a little bit about you before we get into it.
Sure, that's no problem. We're flexible as much as we can be. I am the communications director for the Better Business Bureau serving Northwest Florida. So we cover the 14 counties in the Panhandle. Our counties are from the Alabama state line to Leon County, which is where Tallahassee is. So a lot of your listeners might not know Leon County, but they probably have heard of Tallahassee. So we cover the counties in between there, and I do travel to all of those counties, and I give presentations on identity theft and scams. And I'm basically the spokesperson for the BBB. But Lisa is the person that does a lot of the investigations. And so even though I get to tell people what happened and what we did, she's actually the person that actually does most of the work.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, then, and leading right into that, definitely want to make sure that you chime in as the show progresses, because you're as you said, the voice box of the show here. So, but I think we both agree at this point that the real heroine of this particular tragedy turned triumph is Lisa. For her role in the case, Lisa, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how long you've worked for the BBB and how you got into that line of work.
Well, thank you, Kyle. I'm a dispute resolution specialist for the BBB. Unlike Tammy, I am literally chained to my keyboard daily, processing consumer complaints, answering questions, and fielding investigations when necessary.
Very cool. And how I mean, did you start out in that role? Did you progress to that role? Like, is that something that interested you from the start?
I was hired 3 years ago as a complaint specialist. My background is in communications, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of it.
Yeah,
she does. It's a whole different line of work, but I get a lot of satisfaction out of it, and I get to work with both consumers and businesses, and really try to help resolve disputes, problem solving, and getting to the crux of the matter, which in many cases with consumer complaints, it's really a miscommunication issue, and so we serve as a bridge between businesses and consumers to try and bring them both together and be a neutral mediator, if you will.
Right. And so you're familiar with I'm calling this the Cabinet Con, because it's very, very apt title, I think, for the story. You're familiar with that, of course, because that's your case down in Florida. Because you're credited with cracking this thing open, as I understand it. Describe how you initially found out about that issue, and how is that customary for how you normally find out about issues?
Well, Robert Stoll and Pensacola Discounted Cabinets came to our attention, much like others, and that is via consumer complaint. Mm-hmm. So back in November 2018, we received our first complaint against the business, and it was the earliest complaint that we received, and it was also for the lowest dollar value. In this case, consumers hired Robert Stoll to come out and take measurements and basically replace their cabinetry. Well, he went out to the property, took the $200, did not take the measurements, and provided all kinds of excuses as to how he was going to send his contractors out. They had to do this, that, and the other thing. So basically, he left with their money and never came back. Mm-hmm. And again, that's, $200 doesn't sound like a large amount, but the subsequent complaints that it seemed like all the dollar value just ratcheted right up. I think the last one we received a total of 7 complaints in a very short period of time, and the last one that we received was for over $8,000.
Yeah, I've kind of found that pattern myself, and I've talked to a few of the victims. I've talked to my connection to this story is an old friend of mine, so I find it interesting that there seems to be layers to this thing. I mean, I don't know how you guys look at it from your side, but when I, as an investigative journalist, I see that, as you to use your term, ratcheting it up, it looks like that's the first phase. And if the people go away after that and just say, whatever, it's $200, I'll just call another contractor, then they get away with $200. But then it goes up to another amount where they like call and complain, and they're like, all right, well, we'll send a guy out or whatever. And then they, either destroy their kitchen and leave all their cabinets in their yard, or they, take another fee and say, oh, well, sorry about the miscommunication. We've got like a shipping delay or something like that. And then it just it moves up, as you say, to that level. Given that pattern, right? I don't know how involved you were in finding out that particular pattern. Given that pattern, though, is that common? I mean, are cons like this that are coordinated? Do they build up to an amount? Are they coordinated like that? How does that work?
Well, I'll tell you, it's actually very obvious. This complaint came in November, and then I think in January is when the rest of them came in. I think within a 4-week period, we got the other 6, and they come in, boom, 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 boom. And they're flashing up on your screen every day, every couple of days. So it's fairly obvious when you're doing the work that something is amiss. So
from your end.
After the first couple, you decide you need to start looking into things and open an internal investigation and basically just start poking around, probably much in the same way that you do, although we probably have different sources for that in terms of the information that we're looking for. But yeah, it becomes very obvious early on that something is amiss with business.
Well, I'm going to get into. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even though that low level of $200, that's $200 that somebody paid him, and even though it sounds like a small amount, it probably isn't to that individual person.
Yeah.
So a lot of consumers will tell us how appreciative they are with Lisa because she takes the time, she listens to them, and each one is an individual person and not as a group. And so they're taking care. She's taking care of them personally.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And you mentioned the $200. So, I don't know about the particular statutory limits on what constitutes fraud in Florida, but in most of my investigations, the $200 limit is about where over that amount, like $201 up to $10,000, is considered felony fraud, and then beyond that, it's like a capital fraud or something like that. But so what do you guys know, is that a coordinated number by them to stay at or below that number because they can avoid a jail time for that?
No, I don't think so. Honestly, in this case, I don't think they're that smart, and I don't think,
they don't know the law, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it.
Right? I think it's more opportunity. And when you look at some of the victims, which I initially did not, now the state's attorney's office and, the documents that were filed, the press release indicated that a certain number of these victims were senior citizens. Some of them were disabled. I think one of them was a veteran. So I'm not even sure that the business, I don't think it was a scheme that was well planned out in advance. I think it was a matter of opportunity.
Yeah. So I have a different theory, and this is not because I disagree with what you have to say in any way, actually. But when I went down the rabbit hole that is the cabinet con, I found ties to other people who also have criminal pasts in other states, actually, that are associated with this man. One of which actually showed up as his witness. And yeah, so I actually think this is
testifying for bad guys.
Well, not just that, but I think he might be protecting his own interests because he's still going forward with it. I actually reached out to the same company, and they're getting back to me. So the business isn't closed. The thing isn't done. I'm going to say, my investigation is ongoing on this because I'm going to, after this interview, I was kind of waiting for this one to pick it back up, but I'm going to call Stoll in prison, kind of like as a victim's advocate or maybe like a convict advocate and say, you know, the punishment for this seems really harsh. I mean, I try to get it, kind of coax a couple answers out of him that way and see if he can give me some more information. But I think this is a ring. I think his family's involved. I think just looking at the evidence that I have, just being associated with him and how the court proceedings played out, that there are in fact other individuals. And so off the whenever we stop recording here, I'll edit this part out that I'm saying right now, but I'll probably follow up with you guys if you're interested.
I'd love for you to follow up and give us a skinny on the background.
Okay, cool. I'll do that. I don't want to reveal too much in this one anyway, but picking it back up.
Sure.
How did you feel? This one's about Lisa. I know Tammy's ecstatic about it, but Lisa, this is the first time you and I have talked. How did you feel about the victory that the prosecutor's office had in their win?
Well, we're always glad to see that the bad guys have been stopped. And quite honestly, it would have been enough for me to have them put out of business just so that they're not continuing to scam people. I was a little taken aback by the sentence. It stated that he could have gotten a minimum of 26 months, and the judge gave him 10 years with a 20-year probation. That is harsh.
Yeah.
And so she must have known something that we don't, or she must have been really moved by the testimony of the victims at the sentencing hearing.
Yeah, they described a pretty interesting scene where the entire back row was all of his victims. And so the prosecutor asked them to stand up in that very, very show of support that you're describing the judge was potentially looking for, or at least found out. And I'm sure that had a little bit to do with it. The more people I talk to, haven't talked to the judge, but the more people I talk to about it, the more I think that, she was moved by the amount of people. I think that sentence is a bit harsh when I'm looking at it from the outside. But then when I talk to the victims, I'm like, they're happy about the maximum. They're happy about all that stuff. But, Florida has statutes in their laws that they're tired of elderly people getting ripped off. Really tired of it. And they're trying to make examples of people. And I think this is just one of those.
And that's what I was going to say. I think she was making an example to say that we are not going to take it anymore, and that if you do this kind of business and defraud the seniors or anybody, that you're going to pay the price. Yeah.
Let's talk about your job a little bit more before I get, because I'm going to go down that particular train in a second, but just to keep it, I want to familiarize my listeners with how the BBB goes through their investigations. I mean, there's a dedicated wing in the BBB for investigations, and I'm curious how that works and how many of these things do you guys find a year and turn over? I mean, how prevalent is fraud like this?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure how many open investigations we have. I know that I have probably half a dozen on my desk right now, and some of them are closed without this level of concern. Some of them are just not necessarily good businesses, but they're not to the scale of Robert Stoll.
Right.
And sometimes we open an investigation mainly because we don't have enough information on the business and we're having difficulty finding it. Public information today is so easily available that when you can't find information, it's a big question mark. Mm-hmm. Why can't we? So a lot of the investigations are opened and closed fairly quickly. Those that are of more concern, we have reporting procedures. BBB has been in this business for over 100 years, and we have a very high standards and a lot of processes in place. So when we do investigations, it's a whole, basically a checklist of what you need to look for and what you need to investigate and document. Documentation is very important. We don't jump to conclusions. We actually have to have documentation before we can come to a conclusion about something. And a lot of times that has to be reviewed by supervisors before we post any custom text, for example, on the website. Before we publish something on the website of this nature, it has to be reviewed before it's, published.
And I think one of the reasons why the law enforcement and we have such a good partnership is because that investigation is all of that reporting and documentation. And when we turn that over, when they request it and we turn it over, we've basically done the background for them, and they can pick right up and continue on, and very rarely, have to go over what we've done because they trust what we've done is correct.
Right. By the time that if they get it from us, they know that something's been done on it. It's not a wild goose chase. They're not unsubstantiated claims. If they get a referral from us, they know that something's been done, and they need to take a look at it.
Yeah.
And they don't have to go searching for the victims because part of that reporting,
Right.
we have the victim's information and what they've told us, so they can just call and confirm or meet with them.
So I have two questions about that. It sounds like that's a very hard fought and well refined process because you do a lot of it, and that's what you do. So I think that there's something here that I think the public could benefit from. The first is how can people reach out to you or your department, or what's the best contact they can have if they feel they've uncovered a scam? That's part one. I'll let you answer that one, and I'll ask you the second part to that in a second.
Okay. Actually, we have a website called Scam Tracker. And so anybody in the country and Canada can actually go to www.bbb.org/scam tracker, and they can look and see what kind of scams are happening in their region. They can look for money loss. They can look for geographical, the type of scam, and then they can actually report a scam. So depending on where they're located, once they report it and hit submit, then the scam information will go to the BBB that they're closest to.
Mm-hmm.
And then if somebody is looking and sees that particular scam, if, like say, law enforcement is looking at a certain investigation and they happen to see this, there is a button on that screen that they can click that goes to that local Better Business Bureau, and then they can contact us directly and they can ask questions. There's also a media button. And so if they want to report this, then again, it goes to the local Better Business Bureau communications person, and then we get together and we possibly do a story with it. So it's been up since 2015, and we have over 290,000 scams that have been reported. And so it's very popular. But our scams, we get phone calls on a daily basis with people saying, I've got this phone call, I've got, that email. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a scam.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and Kyle, one of the best features that was recently added to the BBB Scam Tracker is it's integrated with the State of Florida Department of Financial Services. So when a consumer files a scam on BBB Scam Tracker, it's immediately shared with the Florida Department of Financial Services, who is trying to track and prevent consumer fraud.
It's very cool. Is Florida the only place where that exists? That connection?
As far as I know, I can't speak to any of the other BBBs.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure. Our CFO, financial officer of the state,
right.
We did this partnership with them, and so I'm sure it was state to state. So I'm not sure if the other states have that going or not.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to get back to my second question in a second. You're always drumming up new questions for me, but do people misuse this system to maybe create problems for businesses maybe owned by their ex-spouse or something they're angry at? Yeah?
Yes, the answer. Yes, it is. Yes, they do. And I'll tell you.
So far in the case, we've heard from several victims, the prosecutors, and the civilian investigators that worked the case. Next month, we'll hear this.
That's what I told Robert. I was like, what in the hell is going on with cabinets and all this? I was like, you don't know what all he's into. They've had information going on him for a while. I'm just trying to do the right thing. He needs to be stopped.
The thing is, we had dealings with him before, and he came in and put white porcelain tile all throughout our house, except in our pool room. did a beautiful job. We were so happy with it. And so he did floors and cabinets. So, of course, we went back to him to have the kitchen cabinets done.
And it was like an act of God to get him out. And he's very good at what he does. We had to go to court, like, well, you had to go file paperwork like 3 or 4 separate times, to evict and to put his stuff out in the street. And it was just a lot. And then all these people kept coming up, like individuals who was looking for him, again, thinking that I was part of whatever. I was like, man, I just rent the building. Rent out a lot, said, have a building for rent. But there were so many people that came up here looking for him. It's kind of getting scary on my part.
We went down there like a little getaway, but really to do reconnaissance, figure out like, hey, is anything happening with the property? Can we find this dude? I, dug up a few addresses. I mean, I've learned a lot, right? I mean, I'm not a private investigator by any stretch of the imagination, but honestly, when you called, I was like, shit, did the McGays put this dude up to? Like, I don't think, I don't know. Like, it screws with your mind. You don't believe that humans are capable of such just vulgar, right? I mean, there's no attention, right? There's no building permit even filed, right? So for someone to take, $565,000 and flush it down the toilet, kind of wild, right? You don't imagine that that's something that, it looks like an official contract. And even so, like the guy owes me based on interest, he owes me like, close to 800, it was like $777,000 last calculation I did.
What you just heard was a snippet of the rest of the case as we have it at the time of this recording, and it's absolutely incredible. We speak with undercover law enforcement investigating the fraud ring. We go back and speak with the prosecution team once more. So we have another conversation with them, except this time another member of the alleged fraud ring is brought into the conversation. We talk to even more of the victims. We stumble across a convicted sex offender who's mixed up in the case. And if that wasn't enough, we also call Robert Stoll's family and his caseworker, who are working to put us in touch with Stoll himself. He is currently in prison, so that's a bit of a hurdle. To say that there are several amazing twists and turns in this case is simply an understatement. I am busting at the stitches in my britches to get all of that content out to you. Trust me. If you knew what I know, you'd want to hear it too. We've been so happy about the attention and response that we've gotten on this case. The people involved in taking down this criminal are simply heroes, and the support we've gotten for telling their stories has been overwhelming. If you think that's worth $5, head over to legallyinsanefilms.com, click that, join the fan club link, where you'll then continue to get access to our live streams. You'll get all the answers to each week's quiz, shout outs, prizes, voting powers, all that stuff. You'll get access to case files and a whole lot more. You basically get everything we have. Did you know that I'll be at CrimeCon 2022 in Las Vegas? If you've listened this far in the season, chances are you're not only a fan of the show, but you're probably also a fan of true crime stories in general. And that being the case, why not put your love of solving crimes and helping victims into action this month? I'll be in attendance April 29th and 30th, and I'll be handing out free swag. So if you're interested in attending, shoot me an email at thejusticepod@gmail.com, and we'll set up a time to meet. Now, back to the show.
Yes, it is. Yes, they do. And I'll tell you,
it's more on the complaints than the review side and not the scam tracker side.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, though, it's generally fairly obvious.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of emotion behind it, and they don't always include the pertinent facts that a consumer would when they're filing a complaint, a legitimate complaint.
Right.
So it's generally pretty easy to suss those out.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on the nature of the complaint, we might still process it and send it to the business. Once we get the business's response, things become a little clearer. When a consumer files a complaint, we only have one side of the story. And on first blush, it's very believable, right?
Yeah.
Until you hear the other side of the story, which is the response from the business.
And we do that on every one of them. Nothing goes up on our website for the public until after we have the consumer and the business go back twice. And we also vet and make sure that the consumer is actually a real consumer and they aren't trying to defraud the business in some respect.
Well, that's good.
But there are some people out there that like to, they basically want a refund. They're trying to shake the guy down, stone her down. They're kind of inventing making all these excuses as to why the job wasn't done properly or why they shouldn't have to pay, and that sort of thing. There are bad consumers out there, just like there are bad businesses.
Okay. I tell people in my presentations to, before you do business with a particular company, go online to their profile and look and see if they do have any complaints, and check out how the business responded to the complaints, because that's more important than whether or not they have complaints or not, is how they responded to the consumer. So if a consumer is really adamant that they, one thing was wrong or the other thing was wrong, and the business tries everything possible, including giving their money back to the consumer, and the consumer still isn't happy, what else can the business do?
Right. Yeah. They can't pay them for their time.
So it's very important that our, businesses respond, because a lot of times the response is what other possible customers of theirs will see.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier 290,000. That's a hell of a number. In reaching out, okay, this was the second part to that question. It's good that it flows right into that. But in reaching out, is there anything that consumers can do to kind of make your work a little easier, like doing research before they reach out, or maybe package their messages to you in a certain kind of like list of crucial points? What I want to do here is it just, I don't want to have the public bum rush you with calls and emails and stuff, but so to make your job a little easier, how do they do a little of their own sleuthing, or maybe confirm a scam before they send it to you? How do they do that?
Actually, it's 262,000. I was a little off.
Okay.
But that's nationwide and includes Canada too. That's just not for our area. Uh-huh. But that's when they submit a possible scam, they are providing all of that information to us. So if they know the name, I'll give you an example. One of the main scams that is across the country is what we call a puppy scam, and that's when they go online, they find a fake website, and they think that they're purchasing a puppy that's going to be, or any kind of animal, but it's called puppy scam. And they're going to, pay money by electronic transfer, and they're going to get this animal either, flown to them, or they're going to have to drive somewhere and pick it up. And so they have the name of the company, they have a phone number, they give us a synopsis, so it's a paragraph or two of, what their experience was. So we have all of that information besides their contact information as well.
Okay.
Right. So like the obvious things like the website address, any email, phone number, just any information that they have on any communication they've had with the scammer, that's helpful.
And speaking of doing this kind of investigation themselves anyway, how can people best protect themselves against con artists and scams kind of operating in their communities? Are there maybe questions that they can ask potential contractors or whomever that might kind of throw up some red flags, or maybe clue them in on issues that they could dig deeper into?
Sure. I mean, for contractors that knock on your door, I wouldn't give them any money. Because you haven't found out if they're true or not. Anybody can make a business card up. One of the things that we have going around, especially in Florida because of hurricane season, is storm chasers is what we call them here. And as soon as a storm comes through, they will drive right in and start knocking on doors in neighborhoods and say, I did something for your neighbor down the road, and I've got extra materials to do this and that.
And charge you $12,000 to put a top on your roof.
Right. So, don't, take a step back, think about it. Don't be so, and they're going to want you to make a decision fast because you don't think about it. So get a business card, call the BBB, or, go on our website if it's after hours or on the weekend and check them out. And don't, just because they have something on their truck that tells you who they are, doesn't necessarily mean that they are in the business and that they have the proper licenses. I saw a truck that was like a construction truck, and the tag was Texas. Well, it could be that they have several vehicles in several states and they're licensed in Texas because that's where their home office is. But you want to make sure that they're licensed in Florida, because somebody licensed in Texas doesn't have the local licenses in Florida. Then if you have a situation where you need to either get your money back or complain about them, they don't have any kind of obligation here in Florida.
Good point. And this is something that came up actually in Stoll's case, because he did that. He showed up. Maybe I'm paraphrasing something one of the witnesses told me, so I should probably back up and say it has been alleged that Stoll was one of these people who actually concentrated some effort on focusing on victims of storms and things like that. They show up, they're like, oh, you had some damage, maybe your damage is just to the exterior of your house, but if you're already going to fix it, why not throw another couple $1,000s at it and we'll redo some stuff. What, if any, because it may be storms in Florida, but it could be something else in some other places. I know there's tornadoes and things in the Midwest and stuff like that. But what other kinds of things can people look out for where con artists target victims that you guys are familiar with?
The main thing is that they want you to make a decision right away.
Exactly. Because a legitimate business will want you to think it over and be prepared to sign a contract and make a commitment.
And don't sign the contract unless you've read the entire thing. And if you talk verbally with someone that you're going to do business with, you make sure that whatever you decided verbally is in that contract. Otherwise, that business doesn't have any obligation to follow through with something that you just talked about verbally.
Right. You know what else came up? To me, I think that technology has allowed people to get access to better technology cheaper and more easily. Would you suggest maybe saying to the would-be contractor, say, hey, would you mind us recording your conversation? Do you think that would kind of push away some con artists, perhaps? I mean, is that something that might give people some ammunition?
I mean, it could, but it's just an audio or a video, and if they're not from this area, they can just take off. I mean, unless you take a video of them and you get their information, they can be from anywhere, so it would be hard to track them down.
Yeah.
They gave you false information.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was looking at it the other way, and kind of saying that if it was a true con artist, they just wouldn't want their image being recorded, but
sure. It is true.
Go ahead.
Lisa had a point.
Another thing that I warn consumers about when I'm talking to them over the phone, hopefully before, but certainly this occurs after the fact and results in a complaint, is that today a lot of businesses, even legitimate businesses, they're trying to go paperless to some extent, and for companies that are on the road and working out of their trucks during the day, for example, home repairmen, that sort of line of business, they're using iPads and other devices. And so when you think that you're going to get an invoice or a receipt, or they want you to sign an estimate or something, now they're handing you an iPad or some other device similar, and they just want you to sign it, and there's no paper, and you can't really read what you're signing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like scrolled all the way down. If it were a contract, you could see from the top to the bottom, or maybe flip it over and see the terms and conditions on the reverse side. Well, when you're given a digital device like that, you're signing on the bottom. You don't know what you signed up for. And that's a big concern, and it results in a lot of complaints. And near scams, I would say. Near scams.
And I will tell you that I had a business come to my house, so it's a personal experience, where they gave me a quote, and they emailed me the quote. And that way I could read over everything. Yeah. And then they sent me the contract by email, so I had that to read over. And then they asked me to sign on the iPad. But all of that was provided to me electronically before they asked me to sign.
Right. That's all good advice. Is there maybe an online resource that the BBC has that lists other good points of advice to protect consumers?
There is a website www.bbb.org/avoid-scams.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go there for a lot of tips.
Okay.
We also publish a lot of brochures. I know Tammy uses them when she does events that are targeted for specific issues, for example, scams against seniors, identity protection, things like that. So we have a wealth of information and a lot of different methods of getting it out there. People can call into a local office and we can send them the information.
Correct.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
But on the fly, the biggest thing is, take a step back. Don't do anything right away. And if they are pressuring you, just let it go.
Yeah.
If there's going to be some, if they come to you and said, oh, it's only good for today, well, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't have time to investigate. I don't have time to look. And we also tell people to get, 3 quotes on things to make sure that the price that you're going to pay is going to be, competitive. There might be somebody out there that's twice as much, but maybe their service is better. So get 3 quotes, and that way you covered, and just to make sure that everything's legitimate.
Yeah. Awesome. Guys, I can't tell you how happy I was that we finally got to talk, because this is great information. I think it's so useful that people can actually take and move forward with this information. Have I asked all good questions? Have I missed anything? Is there anything people really need to know that you guys want people to know?
Like I said, just be careful as far as scams is concerned. For reviews and complaints on our website, we are, I believe, one of the only organizations that does take complaints and reviews, and that we vet them all, so it's not immediately up online for the public, whereas other sites are, and very hard to get those down when they are not truthful. And so we make sure that the consumer was really a customer, and we check with the business as well, and we don't just put them up without making sure that some of it is, or all of it is, truthful.
Yeah. Cool. Lisa, anything?
Now, one or the other may not be happy with the results,
right.
But we have at least taken our due diligence to make sure that everything has been vetted.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much for the interview, ladies. And obviously, thanks so much for the wonderful work you're doing to protect your neighbors in your community. That's what this show is all about. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Hang on a second.
I thought so.
Okay. I normally say before the interview, don't hang up when I say goodbye, but I got a closer I can use. So yeah, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Good stuff. So
did you get the email I sent you for the Inmate magazine?
I haven't checked my email yet this morning.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. It's a follow-up that the FTC put out, but I put it in there where you can actually go and see. It only mentions us as, thanking us for their help, but that was one that we started, and Lisa started with the investigations again, and there were a lot of complaints.
450.
And this is called Inmate Magazine?
Yes, and
cuts right to the chase with that title.
We get these, we get these investigations started because the business is located in our service area. And so we have people in many states that, are victims and their families and whatnot, because that business was located actually in the Fort Walton Beach area. And then there was another one that's called Book It, and they're like a Travelocity. And they were in Panama City, Florida, which is also our area. But they were basically providing services and not following through. So they were taking people's money. I actually did an interview with an ABC affiliate in Dallas, Texas via Zoom, because she had talked to a victim of Book It. So
some of these people were like stranded too.
Yeah, they were. I think one of them, they
were stranded in Jamaica.
Yeah, they actually got a flight there. They had booked the flight there, but when they got there and they got to the resort, they didn't have the reservation for them.
And wow.
So
okay.
That was very interesting, and I'm not sure. Pennsylvania has settled. The state of Pennsylvania has settled with them. And they have a beautiful building that's totally vacant because they had to shut down.
Wow, that's so. These are the types of stories that I really want to do. So if
we're on speed dial now.
Yeah, if you guys want to, if you guys have really interesting stories like this that are huge success stories like those, write down a list. I mean, if you guys are down to do a series of these, I'm sure that it could only help garner attention for your mission. And if you guys are willing and you have the time, I'm happy to do these. You know, I don't want to take up all your work time. If you want to do it on the weekends or if you're okay with doing it at work, I'm happy to do it whenever. But if that's something you're interested in, it's obviously going to help. And you guys obviously have your hearts in the right place. So, you know, if you're interested.
I think we're interested. I think we ought to explore that more.
Okay. Awesome. Well, this show isn't going to air for a little while now because my crew, I've gone back into the editing bay for a film that I'm releasing, kind of expanding it. But once that's done, we're collecting all of these stories now, and we're kind of in pre-launch mode. So when we launch, it'll be great to have several of these stories from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you can get that, I don't know if you need it approved or whatever, but I'd love to do more of these. I mean, they sound like they're great things. I can probably do even video podcasts if you guys are interested in having your faces on. If not, we can certainly just drop over evidence and photos that you guys have. I can also sequester things from localities, little different communities, and reach out to people who've been victims. They usually have a ton of evidence as well. So yeah, let's get something started if you're at all down for that.
We'll just run it past our CEO, but for the most part, I mean, you know, anything that we can get the word out for people to be on the lookout for, and you know, to be cautious about. That's our important, you know, educating our consumers and also our businesses, because there's a lot of business scams out there too that they get caught up in.
Yeah, of course. And I'm curious for my own information. You guys are not a government agency, right? You're a private company, right?
No, we're a nonprofit. Actually, we have a foundation also, and that's a 501c. So, no, we are not, and no government funded at all. It's only by membership.
All right. Well, do me a favor. I don't want to get into your business right now, but let me know if you need to clear this through your CEO or whatever you need to do. If you guys can have a discussion with me about how you make money and how I can potentially help you make more of it. You know, I don't like plugging everything, but
we're not for profit. So
right. But you got to keep running, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that because of that.
Our accredited businesses, they have an annual fee depending on the size of their company. And we have about 1,900 of those, I think, right now, which in the scheme of things, if you go on and look at our website, a profile in our area, we probably have 24,000 profiles, but that includes businesses that are out of business or, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But our accredited businesses are the ones that help us educate people, that keep us going, that, you know, provide information that we get, communications-wise, scam-wise, all of that. It's because of them that we are here.
Well, yeah, and so I guess when I ask that question, I'm looking at how I can script future episodes with you, because I mean, at the end of this thing, people are going to be interested in helping you, not if only that, but also in addition to that, I'm already interested in reaching out to my local BBB chapter and registering my LLCs, because you know, that could be a mutual benefit as well. So, you know,
tell them we sent you.
I'll do that. So cool. Let me know whenever you guys get that run up the pipe, you know, and jot a list down of really interesting cases that you guys have, and I'll put it through my crew, and we'll set something up.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Kyle.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend.
Okay. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good show. All right. So that was Tammy and Lisa from the Better Business Bureau down on the Panhandle of Florida, doing great work down there. Wow. Great feeling from those gals. They clearly have their hearts in the right place. They're clearly out there doing good work. They could have done anything, right? I mean, they both have communications backgrounds. They could be teaching. They could be, you know, working for various publications, probably even making more money. I don't know how much they make. Not going to make any assumptions, but they're out there doing good stuff. So if you have anything to contribute to the Better Business Bureau, if you find yourself in the Panhandle area of Florida, definitely submit what you think might be something they can use. And if you have, obviously, if you're not in Florida, there's Better Business Bureau offices all over the country. Find your local chapter, become a member, get your business listed, and, support the good businesses out there working for equitable services and products for their communities. I mean, it strikes me as perfect that the Better Business Bureau, because they are isolated and because they're individualized to communities, they're a perfect candidate for the Small Town Justice podcast. So thanks to those gals. Hopefully we can do a few more episodes with them. Goodbye for now. What an episode. A lot was revealed there. As promised, here is the list of the Better Business Bureau's resources and advice on staying safe from scammers. Number 1, make sure you don't sign anything electronically where you can't get paperwork in your hand for an immediate receipt after payment. Number 2, if you've been affected by a storm, don't accept any contract from a quote-unquote disaster relief builder until you've, vetted them or, just made sure that they've got a history in the area. Or just avoid them altogether and call someone with a good track record. Check to see if the contractor has a rating with the Better Business Bureau. It's a great resource. Obviously, you'll want to go there and check them out there. Call the Department of Financial Services and see if the contractor has or has had an investigation against them and what the results of that investigation were. Number 5, make sure that the business is licensed in your state. In Florida, you can find all the business license listings at the link on our website for this podcast. That's legallyinsanefilms.com. Number 6, watch out for mobile businesses. Not that they're actually scams, but they're often paperless and, of course, in their invoices, receipts, or estimates, when you sign them, are hard to read, and sometimes, they have nothing to give you to take with you and put in your hands. Number 7, go to bbb.org/avoid scams for lots of additional tips. Number 8, you can request that the BBB send you physical pamphlets of active scam alerts, methods for identity protection, and lots of other useful tips. Number 9, the Better Business Bureau says the most obvious telltale sign is pressure. The minute they start pressuring you, close the door, hang up the phone, just avoid them. And number 10, you can always contact legallyinsanefilms.com and we can reach out to various companies on your behalf just to make sure they're legitimate. Send those questions to thejusticepod@gmail.com. Who knows, we might even make a podcast out of it. For this week's vote, I'd like you guys to decide on where we go next. Option A, I have another interview with a witness who's actually been a victim of Robert Stoll multiple times, and frankly, her story is undoubtedly the most shocking of the lot. Not just because Stoll went after her twice, but also because of just how calculating she reveals Stoll to be on one of his cons. That's option A. Option B, I can release an interview that I have with Renee, who's the former landlord of Michael McKay. Her interview is important not only because we're starting to move into McKay's story, but also because she's got leads on tons of witnesses and other victims. Her interview really was a turning point in this discussion, and of course, this is in addition to her recollection of the business she had with McKay by herself. She reveals a variety of McKay's tactics, some of the people who were defrauded, even company names that he used to run his scams. They came looking for McKay, and of course, having to take McKay to court was also part of her description. So that's a very revealing call, and if we go this route, I'll go ahead and actually include 2 calls that I had with her for my fan club members. So that's option B. Option C, I've also finished editing the calls that I made to all the victims listed on Robert Stoll's paperwork and the other people that I could find through different means. I called to get their stories, and boy, was I amazed at what I got back. These include a good variety of folks. One happened to be even a criminal himself, and yet another was even a cop. An undercover one, in fact. I've anonymized his voice, but his story is very revealing. If you vote to hear this as our next episode, I'll also include a call that I'm making to a legitimate cabinet installer who's aware of Stoll's con and even helped the victims in the wake of the destruction that befell his victims' homes. So that one is actually going to be a twofer. All right, so there you go. You'll definitely want to stick around for that episode, which I'm calling From Victims to Victory. From here forward, our full live streams will only be available to fan club members. We will try to squeeze in as much crucial information as possible into the first half of those live streams, but remember, the full live streams that will be available on our Investigator level and up, of course, come with a special thanks to our fan club supporters. Small Town Justice is always looking for good people and great stories. Our mission is to expose injustice and celebrate the heroes fighting it. If you have a story that fits that criteria, email it to thejusticepod@gmail.com. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the YouTube channel, where every once in a while a free bonus or outtake might just slip by. That's youtube.com/Kyle O'Donnell. It does seem a bit redundant to say this, but if you're hearing impaired, you can also watch these episodes on YouTube and turn on the closed captions. Small Town Justice is a production of Legally Insane Films, LLC. All rights are reserved. Until next time, I'm your humble host, Kyle O'Donnell. Go legal, but don't go insane.